to Congressman Reed and Suozzi, who graciously agreed to join us virtually when our congressional conference was canceled. The congressmen are both Toms from New York. They both serve on the Ways and Means Committee. One's a Republican, one's a Democrat, but both understand our industry really well. And rather, guys, than go through your formal bios, I thought I'd follow Congressman Reed's lead, who generally starts our group meetings with an icebreaker. So today's topic is, I thought we could share an insurance or an financial experience that gave you a better understanding of the industry and what we do. And to give you guys a break, I'll go ahead and go first, give you gentlemen some time to think about it. And I'll share my story and then you guys can share yours. One of our past presidents was my parents' agent in New Orleans. And he died just before the 2013 congressional conference. And so I shared this story before, and it was that after my dad died, my mom became really upset about how she was going to pay for bills and how she was going to cover funeral expenses. And my brother and I chatted and said, you know, did mom, dad ever talk to you about having financial problems? I said, no. I said, Mom, you know, what about all those plans that you put in place, you and dad, to talk with Mr. Arthur about? And she responded, oh, those are my rainy day funds. So I'm not sure what level of tragedy my mother expected to experience in her life, but I went, Mom, when your husband dies unexpectedly, it's storming outside. It's okay to tap your rainy day funds. And that was really sort of my true understanding of the meaning that our members have for individuals and families. It was really upsetting, obviously, to lose my father and to see my mother go through that grief. But once she learned that the financial plans were in place and she was going to be able to pay bills, she was going to be able to pay for the funeral expenses, it gave me a better understanding of the industry and the service that our members provide. So now, who wants to go next?
Go ahead, Tommy.
All right, Tommy, you're up.
I think he's
for having us on for the association, and we really appreciate all the hard work you do. And you're always there at the committee. You're always showing up, and so I'm sorry you have to put up with the T&T show from New York today, but I'll try to do my best on my side. Suozzi will steal the show like always. But no, I truly do appreciate your industry, and you know I have a similar story to that. Because I got 8 sisters, 3 older brothers, and my father passed when I was 2, and so.
Oh, I think you're in a bad spot, Tommy.
48. So, you know, she's at 48 years old, and she's got to raise 12 kids by herself. And she faced the same thing that got her through in regards to that and a military death benefit check as well as Social Security. And so when I've gone through life, I've kind of looked at that future in the same light, is that it's going to be a combination of multitude resources, not only a financial plan, but Social Security, retirement, as well as investments. I think is the sweet spot. And so what you guys do in regards to putting those stools together on the chair to keep it stable into the future is something I've always been sensitive to, and just really appreciate what your industry does. And glad to be with you today. And I'm really glad to be with my friend from New York, Mr. Suozzi, who is always entertaining, but does a great job on the Ways and Means Committee. You know, he's a Problem Solvers Caucus member. We are both in that caucus. We serve together. We have very vigorous disagreements on many issues, but we do it.
Would you cut him off on purpose when he said he disagreed with me?
Yeah, when he disagrees with you, that's it. He's out. No,
Are you still there? Tommy, still there?
He's coming in. Why don't you go ahead, Congressman Suozzi, and give us your take on working with the industry.
Yeah, so just so people who missed Tom's story, you know, he's one of 12 children, and his dad died when he was very young, and his mom was in her 40s. So he really got to appreciate not only insurance but military death benefits and Social Security as well. In my story, I'd say that, you know, my big feeling about life insurance mainly and long-term healthcare insurance came when I first lost my rakes. I was elected mayor of my hometown when I was 31 years old, And then I became the county executive of a big county when I was 39 years old. So I was kind of young when I first started out in politics, and I didn't really care about money. I didn't even think about it. And then I was out of a job. I was not supposed to lose this race. And I didn't even have my own car. I had a car as mayor, car as county executive, and I was broke. I had to send my daughter to college. And I always tell a story that, January 1st of 2010, I got in the car and I sat in the passenger seat and it wasn't going anywhere. I was like, what's going on here? What happened? Anyway, so I was broke and I had to go out and make some money. And my wife was very, very insistent that I had to get life insurance. And I really realized how much peace of mind it gave not only her, but me when I got it. And then I saw it with my parents when they passed away and how important their life insurance policy was. And more important, though, was their long-term health care insurance. And that's something I'm very focused on. My dad was 95 when he died. He died 2 weeks before my election in 2016. My mom died a year later. They both had long-term health care insurance. And I know how troubled that doesn't make any sense financially for most people in your business these days. And I'm working, we had a hearing on Ways and Means where a woman came to testify, Dr. Joan Lynn, who's an excellent geriatric and expert in this area. And she left what she was doing and she's now working as a fellow in my office, even though I guess she's not working right now, on trying to figure out a long-term healthcare policy where the government will have to subsidize some of it for catastrophic causes and figure out how to make this a public-private partnership again. Right now, I have a whole life insurance policy, and I have a rider that I will get, instead of my death benefits, long-term health care benefits. So hey, somebody's behind you there, Diane. The
joys of working from home.
I walked through the living room the other day with a towel on after a shower. Anyway, so I know how important the industry is. It makes a lot of people's lives better. I didn't appreciate it when I was younger, and it wasn't until my 40s and early 50s that I really realized how important it is.
Thanks. Yeah, and I think that's why we need to talk about it more. It's that awareness factor, and a lot of times it isn't recognized until you actually go through that experience. The more that we can talk about it and get people talking about it, especially long-term care, sooner to make a plan, the better. So rumor has it that the two of you actually just left a Problem Solvers Caucus meeting. I don't know how familiar our audience is with the caucus. Can you spend a little bit of time telling them a bit about it, why it's important to you, and some of the activities, perhaps if there's something that you can share about that was noteworthy at the meeting today, that would be fantastic.
Well, so Tom is a Republican and I'm a Democrat, and he's from upstate New York, very different. He's way up there, upstate New York. He's got probably thousands of farmers in his district. I'm downstate New York. I know a guy named Farmer, and I'm a Democrat. He's a Republican. I'm the vice chair. He's the chairman on the Republican side. There's 25 Democrats and 25 Republicans. We meet regularly and try and find common ground. And really, during the whole pandemic, we've been doing a lot of great work together, trying to find common ground, working together on the different packages that we approved bipartisan, working on a back to work plan that we worked on a checklist that we could agree upon. And it's really just, we had a couple problem solvers meetings today. I had one at 2 o'clock. Tommy was on another one at 3 o'clock that I'll let him talk about if he's still on the phone. I don't know if he is. But at 2 o'clock, we had a whole bunch of us, and we were all talking about the need moving forward. I was happy as you can be in this awful time, when I felt like the problem solvers were so important a few weeks ago, when people were really desperate for answers and people of goodwill that could trust each other to try and find common ground. And I know that that's the most, and we all do on problem solvers, realize that's the only way we're going to move forward. We have so many complicated problems in this country. It's only by having people of goodwill trying to find common ground that we can find answer. It can't be operating out of fear and anger and partisanship. And I'm just afraid that we are slipping back into that, Democrat-Republican thing right now. And I want to try and get some of that magic back where we're working together on a regular basis. So Tom, are you still there or not?
I think I'm back in.
Okay, your face is not showing.
Farmland, but I'm not going to use
We
the
can't
farm.
see
I'm
you.
trying to save my broadband. I'm trying to save my broadband, Suozzi. You know, I'm way up here, and we're still on copper wire as we go forward. But I think Tom answered it well in regards to what we are as the Problem Solvers Caucus. And, you know, we are the only show in town in Washington, D.C. where we get together as a bipartisan group. We have dialogue for the last 4 years. We have put together this 54 members, 25-25, that not only have agreed to stay in the room to find common ground, but really to develop levels of trust and friendship. And because you have that, it's the only place I know in Washington, D.C. where we are willing to discuss things candidly. We're willing to discuss things knowing that there's not going to be a political gotcha moment, that it's not going to turn into a campaign ad because you asked a stupid question or you raised a point that you were sincerely troubled about and you wanted to speak candidly. And because it's a culture of trust, we can have those dialogues there. And we've changed the rules of the House. We have made sure that we are making a difference. And I'll just tell you, it's been the most rewarding part of my tenure in Congress. I've been there 10 years, and I've been on Ways and Means. I've done tax reform. I've negotiated international deals. But I will just tell you, the legacy work that I'm going to be most proud of in my tenure in Congress is establishing the Problem Solvers Caucus and sharing it on the Republican side, and meeting great people like Tom Suozzi, who we kid with each other, we pick on each other. That's because we respect each other, and we respect each other's commitment to solving problems for the American people. So glad to be with you, Diane. Sorry for the technological problems, but I look forward to the dialogue.
Yep, no, you're coming through clear, so that's perfect. You mentioned changing the House rules. You know, I've always talked to our members about the magic number in the House being 218, but there's sort of a new number in town. And if you guys can talk a little bit about the significance of 290 now, and if you don't mind, give an example of something that we've worked on together in the healthcare space to give the audience sort of a better idea of what changing those House rules really did.
Okay, I'll give you a quick synopsis. So when we first together the DC quick process, and we would come up with the greatest ideas. We would come up with bipartisan supported piece of legislation. And the problem is we could never get it to the floor. It was because of petty politics, or it was just leadership politics. It was just prioritization wasn't in alignment with the floor time. So we created what we call a consensus calendar. And when the last election happened, both sides of the Problem Solvers Caucus together and said, we will not support a speaker candidate that does not embrace these rule reforms that allow for true bipartisan legislation to have at least an up and down vote on the floor of the House. And that evolved into a huge package called Break the Gridlock. But one of the core reforms that we stood firm on and negotiated when Speaker Pelosi won the election through that process, and kudos to the Democratic leadership that stood firm in order to get this through the Speaker's session to her second term as Speaker, is what we call the consensus calendar. And what that means is if you get 290 co-sponsors of legislation, you do that work, you're guaranteed an up or down vote on the floor of the House. And it's changed the dynamic of the House of Representatives. And we've had at least 20 different successes that have worked their way through that consensus calendar. And I think what Diane's referring to is the Cadillac tax repeal. That was a consensus calendar driven piece of initiative that got signed into law. We've had the widow's tax that penalized our Gold Star families that made its way through into the defense bill because of the consensus calendar. And so there is huge legislation, and I can go on and on and on, but I'll let Tom take it from there.
Yeah, and the 9/11 victims compensation package and a whole bunch of things that we worked on together with the consensus calendar. And the bottom line is you know, Tom was breaking up a little bit in the beginning. In the old days, you'd have 290 people who would agree to co-sponsor a bill. You couldn't even get a vote on it. And so we said that, among several other rules, we would not vote for the new speaker. The Democrats wouldn't vote for a Democratic speaker. The Republicans wouldn't vote for a Republican speaker unless they gave us some of our changes. And so the Democrats won the majority, so we had to hold out. And it was a lot of pressure. You know, I was moving to get onto Ways and Means at the time. It was, you know, it was like, oh no, I'm ruining my career. I'm not going to get appointed to Ways and Means. And everything looks like it's falling apart, but we held tough that we weren't going to vote for Speaker Pelosi, who I'm so glad she's a speaker now, but we weren't going to vote for her. unless we got some changes to the consensus calendar. And I'll never forget the meeting. It was myself and Josh Gottheimer and Stephanie Murphy, and we had to go meet with all the leaders of the Democratic Party. We were all just, our first day of our second term, so we were kind of new. And we're sitting there with all the leaders, and everyone was going around the table, and they were yelling at us. What are you doing? Why are you not voting for the speaker? Why do you want to give power to the other side? What are you doing? And they're one by one, everybody's yelling at us. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're sinking in our chairs. We're like, our careers are over. We're blowing this whole thing. And finally, it gets around to Jerry Nadler, who we'd spoken to earlier that day. And Jerry said, I've read these proposals, and they really all make sense, except I don't like number 6. And I can't remember what number 6 was, but I don't like number 6. And then Adam Schiff says, I've read them also, and they seem pretty reasonable, except for number 6. And then across the table, Richie Neal says, would you be willing to remove number 6 from your proposal? I was like, I do want to remove it. And Josh and Stephanie were like, yes, we would remove it. And so we got the 290 rule, as well as other rules. You used to be able to kick the speaker out with one person protesting, which gave enormous power to people that are the far left or far right trying to kick out the speaker. Now you have to have a third of the members of Congress. And we have a rule that you can do an amendment that had to be given special consideration if you got 20 Democrats and 20 Republicans to look at the amendment. So it's, people wonder why sometimes things that seem so obvious to people on the outside, why don't you just do it that way? Well, you have to understand the politics behind it. And I just want to talk about one thing if I can, Diane. Is that all right?
Absolutely.
So, why don't we just work together all the time? Why don't Democrats and Republicans just, sit down at a table and hammer it out and work it out? And the problem is that most of the districts, most of the seats in the Congress are safe seats. Every year it's like 20, 30, 40 seats are up for grabs. But there's really about 180, 190 Democratic seats and 180 or 90 Republican seats that are safe seats because they're gerrymandered. And if you're the Republican in the Republican seat, the Democrat in the Democratic seat, you're going to win. The only way you can lose is by losing a primary. And very few people vote in the primaries. Less than 15% of the people vote in the primaries. And so the people that vote in the primaries are very active people, often at the more extremes of the party. And if you're a Republican and you vote against your base, you're going to have a rough time in the next primary. If you're a Democrat and you vote against your base, you're going to have a rough time in your next primary. And that's why you have so many politicians just trying to cater to the extremes of their party instead of trying to do stuff in the middle to try and find common ground. I have a primary on June 23rd. I've got 2 people far to the left of me running against me. One of my opponents today, or yesterday, has a tweet storm of about 10 different tweets attacking me for being on this call today. Because how dare I be talking to these insurance people? They're awful people. What are you doing? And so, this is a campaign and how dare I be working with the Problem Solvers? How dare I appear with that crazy Tom Reed from upstate New York? He's so awful. So this is what happens. And it happens on the Republican side as well. So, you think of an issue like, I don't want to bring up a particular issue, but a lot of issues, you say, why don't they just work it out? And you can't get the Republicans on certain issues and you can't get the Democrats on certain issues to even talk about it because they're afraid that they'll lose the base. That's why the Problem Solvers, which seems like a nice idea and very wonderful, is actually a very courageous thing of people trying to work together across party lines to find common ground. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it. It's not easy, it's difficult, but it's very important.
It's very important. I think that's where we get the policy done, right? Is when we can come together and have those discussions and work it out. And as you said, find common ground on things. You mentioned the difficulty, and I know that it is because I've seen both of you have to struggle within your parties to sort of defend your position of working across the aisle. Talk a little bit about your work with the administration too. I know when Congressman Reed pops back in, he can talk about having to work with the speaker and the minority, and there you are. And then Congressman Suozzi, you can talk a little bit about having to work with the administration in a different party, and they're not really part of the Problem Solvers Caucus. So give us a little insight of how that works.
Well, I'll offer a little bit from my perspective. Full disclosure, I was one of the first 8 to endorse President Trump on the campaign trail. I appreciated what he was bringing to the table policy-wise, and And so through that, I developed a relationship with the president. I've also appreciated the fact that the administration does want to get some things done. And one of the things that we were very helpful in getting done for him was criminal justice reform. That's when the Problem Solvers Caucus was asked to lead the effort by guys like Akeem Jeffries, Grover Norquist. We had Van Jones. We had Jared Kushner reaching out to us. And so there is an appetite in the administration and in leadership. I mean, we have a love-hate relationship with leadership. Sometimes they love us because they know that we can bring votes to the table and we can find that common ground, and then they could wink, throw us under the bus. But at the end of the day, they know it has to get done, and then they just kind of play the game, and we're part of that process. But other times we stand for principle and we stand up strong, and we can be a thorn in their side. And we showed that with getting the $12 billion to the southern border over 4th of July last year, when we said, you know what, people are dying down there, and we want to do what's right rather than play politics with it. And so, I think at the heart of most people in Washington, D.C., they're good, honest men and women that want to do the right thing. Just some are not as politically courageous as those in the Problem Solvers Caucus, and they're looking for someone else to go first. And that's why guys like Suozzi and guys like Josh Gottheimer, who chairs it on the Democratic side from New Jersey with me on the Republican. And, we got some leaders on the Republican side, like Fred Upton, Brian Fitzpatrick. I mean, you got some real good people that are really showing the way that it needs to be done. And most people, you sacrifice so much to be in Washington, D.C. in regards to being away from your family and leaving your businesses and going there to try to do something. They look at us now, they're quietly coming up day in and day out going, you know what, I appreciate what you guys are doing because you're doing what I came here to do. And I appreciate your going first, and we'll follow your lead in regards to getting behind you to get you the votes and sign that into law. And the administration says the same thing to us. We were the first ones over during this pandemic. Mike Pence, vice president, I served with them for 2 years. He invited us over to the Situation Room of the Problem Solvers Caucus. And Debbie Burks landed from South Africa 10 hours earlier because they knew that it was going to take bipartisan support to get through this crisis. And we were the only show in town that did it. So most people want to get something done. And we're just, at times we're leading the pack. Sometimes we're leading the pack by getting thrown under the bus. But we don't care because it's about getting it done for the American people.
And I'll just follow up, I'm one of only 10 Democrats in the country that was appointed to this presidential task force to try and reopen the economy. And, it's a great honor. Of course, you get grief for it in a Democratic primary. What are you doing working with these guys? I mean, I don't agree with the president on a lot of different things, but we need to work together to get through this pandemic and to try and reopen the economy in a safe way. And I want to have the opportunity to represent my state and advocate for my state and advocate to this administration and to the officials there. And that's what I've had the opportunity to do. So again, it seems from the outside like, hey, why wouldn't you just work together to try and solve the problem? But the politics often gets in the way. So it's a great honor to work with Tommy and to work with the other members of the Problem Solvers Caucus to try and do exactly what Tom said, do what we came here for. I didn't run for Congress to get a job. I ran for Congress to do a job, to try and solve the problems. And it doesn't happen as often as you would like it to happen, but it happens more with groups like the Problem Solvers coming together than it will otherwise.
Great. Congressman Suozzi, you mentioned your interest in long-term care planning, long-term care insurance, figuring out a way to start that conversation. It seems like, and rightly so, all of the congressional efforts at this point are looking at COVID-19 relief efforts, will eventually move to recovery. Do you see a way of tying that long-term care into sort of those recovery efforts? It certainly ties in when you look at planning. And do you see, I know we only have a few legislative days in between now and the election, give us your thoughts on what's coming next. What do we see with regards to COVID-19 additional efforts? What other topics might be addressed before then? Or are we really looking at lame duck to sort of get into new issues?
Well, I think there's tremendous pressure for us to get something done regarding state and local. I mean, that's just the humongous thing on the table right now. That's COVID related, obviously. And that's Republican and Democratic governors and mayors and county executives and local officials are pushing so hard for us to get something done with state and local. And there are a lot of pieces related to reopening. I always talk about, I have a $50 billion plan to reopen America with testing, tracing, and isolation. But, you know, there's a lot of different iterations of that. I think that something that was dead on arrival a couple months ago, which is infrastructure, has a good shot of something happening where we will get Democrats and Republicans to work together on an infrastructure package that'll be very broad and very far-reaching. And then, of course, you've got there'll probably be a CR for the end of the year related to the budget, you know, at the end of September, and you'll have to do a National Defense Authorization Act, and we've still got to get a lot of appropriation stuff done. So I think those would be the main things. I don't have any. My plan was to try and announce something in July or August regarding long-term care. I may still move forward with that, but I don't believe that it's reasonable for me to expect that something will happen in this environment. But I think that we all have to be looking at big ideas in conjunction with the response and recovery from the coronavirus, and try things that we've been talking about for years. For me, you know, how do we strengthen the middle class? Infrastructure is a big part of that. How do we, I'd like to see us do more on climate and make that part of a jobs creation program as well. And, you know, flatten the carbon curve. And I think we have to be thinking about big ideas. I think that long-term care, there's a huge storm coming in our country with 10,000 baby boomers turning 70 every day. And we don't have the capacity with our nursing homes. The idea of people getting rid of their assets so that the government will pay for their care. It's a real big industry in New York. I think we have to really be focusing on how do we create a model for long-term care where there's a private sector business model that can succeed, and the private sector will make some money out of it and will provide help to people, long-term care to people, but at the same time have a government backstop for catastrophic care, people that are in long-term care over more than 18 months, more like 3 years or 5 years or 10 years.
I'll offer you a couple of things. You know, I think we definitely have to do another package here, probably middle of June is realistic, and it's going to be more about recovery, potentially some stimulus, if you would, in regards to something that may be done for the economy. I do see an opportunity for an infrastructure bill. I do see that being revived, and the president wants to do it. The economy may need it, and if you got 0% interest out there, you might as well take advantage of it, because that's been the biggest problem, is how to pay for it. But other than that, you know, I'll be honest with you, I've been through 2 presidential cycles in Washington, D.C., and I got to tell you, given this crisis, given the fact that we're going into a presidential campaign full throttle, it's going to take up a lot of the oxygen in the space of D.C., and we're going to have to wait till, you know, the first 6 months of the next administration for any vigorous legislation to go forward, in my humble opinion. Obviously, we got lame duck where we're going to have to finish up what needs to get done, tax extenders, some other issues there. But end of the day, I think you're really teeing up for the first 6 months for a new legislative agenda. Hate to say it, but I'm just giving you my honest read as to where we stand right now today.
And I don't think any of us are surprised by that assessment, but appreciate your take on it and appreciate the work that you did. We're coming up to the end of our time slot, and I want to be respectful. If our members are interested in learning more about the Problem Solvers Caucus, where would you send them? If there's a message that you would like to share with them before we sign off, please feel free to give them your closing thoughts, and really thank you so much for. We would have much rather had seen me in person and done this and had our guys all on the Hill. It's one of my favorite times of the year, but really appreciate that you've shifted and we're willing to do this virtually with us.
You know, I think you should be looking who the problem solvers are and try and help them and support them, because they're really trying to do what we all came to Washington to do, which is just figure out how to solve problems. We're not going to always agree with you on your issues in your industry, but you'll always find people that will be willing to listen to both sides and listen to what your concerns are. I know that most of the people on this call are probably individual brokers from small firms, you know, all over the place. And, you know, we're concerned about your issues like any small business throughout America. This is an important time in history. We're all going to remember this. You know, my son Joe was supposed to graduate from college yesterday. So, you know, most he got out of it was a cake. And our daughter is working in Manhattan, but she's working from home this whole time. We have to fight over who gets to use the office. And then our other son broke his ankle, and it turns out he's got to get his knee operated on. He missed his baseball season. He's a junior in high school. So, you know, everything's turned upside down. And we're all affected by this personally. I'm in the epicenter. I represent 3 of the 5 hardest hit counties in America: Nassau, Suffolk, and Queens. As a matter of fact, my father-in-law, we lost my father-in-law, lived in our hometown here. He was 92 years old, got the coronavirus, died within 36 hours. And my mother-in-law got the coronavirus, and thank God she didn't get any symptoms, and she's fine. But things are, you know, tough on everybody. Tough on people who are worried about their health, people that are mourning people that passed, tough on people that are worried about their business, whether they're an employee who's out of a job or a business that's not doing any business. This is a tough, people working on commissions. This is a tough time. And we've demonstrated that, you know, if we work together, we can flatten the curve. You know, if we work together, we can do anything. But it requires people of goodwill to act from a place where they're just trying to do the right thing. I have to tell you, I have had one of my biggest accomplishments in Congress, which is that I got a $49 billion fund put in this bill we voted on Friday to be distributed to states based upon the rate of infection, because our state's the hardest hit state, New York, and you know, there was money distributed to hospitals. Texas got more money than New York, even though Texas had 2.5% of the cases in their hospitals, and we had 38% of the cases in our hospitals. How does that make sense? So we fought to get some money distributed based upon the rate of infection. It was just a $10 billion fund. I worked with Chuck Schumer, a bunch of Democrats and Republicans in New York, and we got it. And it really helped our hospitals dramatically during this awful time. We did a similar thing. I got every Democrat and every Republican in New York and New Jersey to sign a letter saying that they would support a special fund to be distributed based upon rate of infection. And I pushed for $40 billion. We got up to $49 billion. And Tommy's working on a bill where it's a much bigger fund, a different formula. So having that in this bill, which I believe will be part of whatever the final deal is a major accomplishment for me personally, but it's a bipartisan accomplishment as well. It's one of the reasons Peter King voted for this bill. And it'll be the basis for part of a bipartisan deal going forward. So we just got to work together. We got to stop all this, you know, trying to knock each other out. I mean, I'm all for, you know, I'm a Democrat, and I'm going to vote Democratic, and they're Republicans and vote Republican. That's just the way of the world. So, but let's try and respect the fact that we're all here to try and make the world a better place to live in. And let's figure out that there's 90% we can agree on, and the 10% shouldn't rip us apart.
Well said. And thank you, Congressman. I think we've lost your Republican counterpart, but I will give you your time back. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with some of our members. Sorry for your loss. My condolences to your wife and your family. I know that's tough. But as you said, we'll get through this. And you saw the cameo appearances of one of my boys. So yeah, we're working through the balancing working and schooling from home. We'll all get through it, and we'll get through it better together. So thank you very much.
Everybody in your associations, you know that Diane's one of my favorites. She's great. She's so hardworking, and she's always so wonderful to be around, and always so knowledgeable. So thank you so much for everything you do.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.